Section 1 of Instructions to Light Keepers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Maria Casper. Instructions to Light Keepers by the United States Lighthouse Board. Section 1. Notice: Office of the Lighthouse Board, Washington, D.C., July 1, 1881. The following instructions are published for the guidance of light keepers. They are required to read them carefully and attentively, and to refer to them whenever they are in any doubt in regard to their duties or the manner of performing them. Each keeper and assistant keeper will be furnished with a copy, to be kept and used at the light stations where they are employed, to be handed over to their successors when they are relieved or discharged, or left at the light stations in case there should be no successors. Each light vessel keeper will be provided with 2 copies, for the use of himself and those of the crew who are charged with the management of and attendance upon the lights and fog signals. By order of the Lighthouse Board, John Rogers, Rear Admiral, U.S.N., Chairman. Note: these pages are excerpted from the 1881 Instructions to Light Keepers, using a copy of the original publication from the U.S. Coast Guard Historian's Office in Washington, D.C. Not all pages, specifically the salary tables and plates, were included in this version. Treasury Department, Document Number 151, Lighthouse Board. General Instructions to all light keepers. 1. The keeper is responsible for the care and management of the light, and for the station in general. He must enforce a careful attention to duty on the part of his assistants, and the assistants are strictly enjoined to render prompt obedience to his lawful orders. 2. In the absence of the keeper, his duties will devolve upon the assistant present who is next in rank. No keeper shall leave his station without informing the assistant present who is next in rank of his intention and of the probable length of his absence, and no assistant shall leave without the previous knowledge and consent of the keeper. But this regulation will not justify the keeper in denying an assistant any proper leave of absence. 3. An accurate report of absences, with the reasons therefor, must be forwarded monthly to the inspector by the keeper. 4. Watches must be kept at all stations where there is an assistant. The keeper on watch must remain in the watch room and give continuous attention to the light while he is on duty. When there is no assistant, the keeper must visit the light at least twice during the night between 8 p.m. and sunrise, and on stormy nights the light must be constantly looked after. 5. No keeper can excuse an assistant from his regular share of duty, except on account of disability. When such disability continues, immediate report thereof must be made to the inspector. 6. Light keepers may leave their stations to attend divine worship on Sundays, to procure needed supplies, and on important public occasions. As no specific rules can be established limiting the times and durations of absences, keepers will be held to strict account for any abuse of privileges. 7. In case of sickness, keepers must provide efficient attendance for the lights. But when a keeper is, or is likely to become, incapable of duty, the inspector must be informed at once of the need for assistance. 8. All keepers must acquaint themselves with the workings of the apparatus in their charge. Upon any doubtful point, questions must be asked. When the station is visited by an officer or employee of the lighthouse establishment, especially while the machinist or lampist is there, the keepers must take pains to acquire knowledge of every detail regarding the mechanism of the apparatus. Ignorance upon any point will not be considered as an excuse for neglect of duty. 9. The keeper is responsible for the careful management and expenditure of stores and supplies. He must practice the strictest economy compatible with maintaining at all times the best possible light. And he must be careful to prevent waste, theft, and misapplication of lighthouse property. 10. Keepers having assistants will, in the presence of an assistant, attend personally to the daily issues. Keepers who have no assistants are required to take from the storerooms daily the necessary articles and quantities of supplies for that day's use. At the time of doing so, they must enter them correctly in the expenditure book. The exact quantity taken at the time must be entered, and not the average of each day's use. 11. A lighthouse must never be left wholly unattended. Where there is a keeper and one or more assistants, either the keeper or one of the assistants must be present. If there is only one keeper, some member of his family or other responsible person must be at the station in his absence. 12. Where there are assistants, the watches must be divided so that an equal share of work shall fall to each keeper. A watch book must be kept and signed by each person when he comes off watch. He must record in the book the condition of the light and the hour when he left the watchroom. If there is a fog signal at the station and it is in operation, he should also so state and specify its condition. 13. The keeper shall take an equal share in all the work and duties of the station with the assistant keepers. 14. When a keeper neglects his duties, it is the imperative duty of each assistant at the station to report the facts without delay to the inspector. The reported keeper must be informed of the complaints made against him, so that he may, if he sees fit, transmit a statement to the inspector with the report. 15. Light keepers must not engage in any traffic on lighthouse premises, and they must not permit it by anyone else. They must not carry on any business or trade elsewhere which will cause them to be often absent from the premises, or to neglect in any way their proper duties. 16. Keepers must be courteous and polite to all visitors who conform to the regulations, and show them everything of interest about the station, at such times as it will not interfere with their lighthouse duties. Keepers must not allow visitors to handle the apparatus, or deface lighthouse property. Special care must be taken to prevent the scratching of names and initials on the glass of the lanterns or on the windows of the towers. No visitor should be admitted to the tower unless attended by a keeper. 17. Keepers must under no circumstances allow an intoxicated person to enter a light tower, nor to remain on the premises longer than is necessary to get him away by the employment of all proper and reasonable means. 18. Keepers must not make any charge nor receive any fee for admitting visitors to lighthouses. 19. Keepers must render every assistance in their power to laborers employed in making repairs or alterations at light stations. In all cases where keepers are able to make repairs, they are expected to do the work themselves. All the mechanical skill of a keeper should be exercised in keeping his station in good order. 20. Keepers must make no change in the colors of towers or buildings without written orders. 21. The utmost neatness of buildings and premises is demanded. Bedrooms, as well as other parts of the dwelling, must be neatly kept. Untidiness will be strongly reprehended, and its continuance will subject a keeper to dismissal. 22. Only members of keepers' families may reside at light stations. The Lighthouse Board alone can grant any exception to this rule. 23. Keepers must report promptly to the inspector, on the proper form, all wrecks which take place in the vicinity of their stations. All the facts relating to the wreck, whether or not the light was seen, and etc., must be ascertained, and the account embodied in the report. It is the duty of light keepers to aid wrecked persons as far as lies in their power. 24. Every precaution must be taken against fire. Fire buckets, when provided, must be kept filled with water and ready for use in a fixed place. In case of the ignition of mineral oil, it can be better extinguished with sand or ashes than with water. 25. Fires and lights in keepers' dwellings must never be left unattended. 26. Boats are furnished to light stations where they are necessary for communication with the mainland, to obtain household supplies, etc., or they are supplied that keepers may perform their public duties properly. They are not provided for personal benefit and convenience. Keepers are forbidden to use boats thus placed in their charge for any other than lighthouse purposes. The boats must not be used for freighting, wrecking, fishing with seines, ferrying, or for carrying goods or passengers for hire. Keepers must make good all damages to boats or their equipments caused by their carelessness or neglect. 27. When a keeper resigns or is removed, a correct inventory of all public property under his charge must be made in the presence of his successor. 3 copies of this inventory must be made and signed by his successor. 1 is to be retained by him, 1 is to be kept by the retiring keeper, and the 3rd is to be transmitted by him to the inspector. On the death of a keeper, his widow or whoever has been left in charge of the light must turn over the public property to the new keeper as above required. 28. No keeper who resigns or is removed, and no representative of such keeper, shall receive any balance on account of salary until he shall have accounted satisfactorily for all public property in his charge. 29. No keeper should sign receipts upon entering on his duties, or at any other time, for any supplies, until he is satisfied that the articles and quantities are correctly stated. Keepers will be held pecuniarily responsible for all which they receipt. 30. Condemned articles, and articles no longer of use at light stations, must be delivered to the master of the supply vessel. Keepers must obtain duplicate receipts for these articles, retain one, and forward the other to the inspector. 31. Monthly or special reports of the condition of a light station must state explicitly what is wanted in case any repairs or changes are needed. All measurements, estimates, etc. must be given so fully that the inspector or engineer will not have to write for further information. Failure to do this has caused much inconvenience and delay. 32. Keepers of stations situated where navigation is closed by ice in winter will exhibit their lights so long as any vessel is running in that vicinity. Lights may be extinguished when navigation is entirely suspended, but must always be shown if it is at all possible for vessels to benefit by them. Report must be made to the inspector of the time of discontinuance and also of the time of relighting. 33. Keepers at island stations on the northern lakes must be governed in exhibiting their lights by the action of those on the mainland. Those who cannot reside at their stations during the winter, or who are permitted to be absent by special authority, must continue their lights as long as possible in the fall, without endangering their lives by being caught in the ice, and must return to their stations as early in the spring as the ice will permit. End of Section 1.
Section 2 of Instructions to Lightkeepers by the United States Lighthouse Board. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Care of lights and their appurtenances. 34. Lights must be lighted punctually at sunset, and must be kept burning at full intensity until sunrise. 35. All preparations must be made early, that there may be no delay in lighting. 36. When the light is extinguished in the morning, the keeper must hang the lantern curtains and immediately begin to put the apparatus in order for relighting. While doing this, the linen aprons provided for the keeper's use must be worn, that the lens may not suffer from contact with the wearing apparel. The illuminating apparatus must be carefully covered before the cleaning is begun. 37. The lens and the glass of the lantern must be cleaned daily and always kept in the best possible condition. Before beginning to clean the lens, it must be brushed with the feather brush to remove all dust. It must then be wiped with a soft linen cloth, and finally polished with buff skin. If there is oil or grease on any part, it must be taken off with a linen cloth, moistened with spirits of wine, and then polished with a buff skin. Under no circumstances must a skin which has been wet or damp be used, as this will scratch the lens. 38. Rouge must be used for polishing the lens whenever necessary. When it is used, it should be broken up, put in water, and reduced to a smooth mixture. To do this, the rouge should be put into about a pint of water and stirred with a perfectly clean stick. Let it rest for a few moments to allow any gritty particles it may contain to settle, then pour it off into another vessel, allowing the grit to remain in the first. Then leave it to settle for about a half an hour, and then pour off the water. The rouge, so prepared, must be spread with a camel's hair brush or a piece of soft linen over the entire surface of the glass to be cleaned. When this coating of rouge has become dry, rub it off with a piece of buff skin until it is all removed. Rouge must be freshly prepared each time it is used. 39. Whiting is prepared and used in the same manner as rouge. 40. To use rotten stone for polishing brass work, pulverize it carefully in a tin pan and mix it with water or oil until it becomes a thin paste. Use it with a woolen cloth, free from dust or grit. After rubbing with the rotten stone, finish with whiting, using a soft, clean rag. 41. To clean reflectors, first dust them, and then rub with a buff skin, lightly dusted with rouge powder, kept in a small double bag of muslin. Then rub lightly with another skin, and finally with a third, which should be passed over the reflector in a light, quick manner with a circular motion. Leakage of gas from the pipe of the stove used in the watchroom should be carefully guarded against, as this gas will badly tarnish a reflector. Silver-plated reflectors are much more easily injured than glass and require great care. 42. To clean the chimneys, they must, if soiled by smoke or oil, be rubbed with a rag or a small piece of soft wood dipped in oil, then wiped off and cleaned with whiting. If this does not remove discolorations, they should be rubbed with a wet cloth and a little soda or common salt. But they must be washed in warm water afterwards, as any adhering salt will cause breakage. 43. Keepers are forbidden to use any other materials for cleaning or polishing than those supplied by the lighthouse establishment. 44. Keepers are forbidden to clean the floors of the lanterns or the stairs and floors of the towers with any material by which dust may be produced. All materials used must be damp and be carefully removed before they are dry. All sweeping must be done with care and chiefly with hand brushes. 45. Utensils of all kinds must be kept in their proper places. While the light is burning, everything which does not belong in the lantern must be removed from it. 46. The revolving clockwork must be kept carefully from dust. It must be oiled with clock oil whenever necessary, care being taken to remove any old and gummy oil before new oil is applied. All parts made of iron or steel must be rubbed with a cloth greased with tallow. The use of salted grease is forbidden. The foot of the fly shaft must be examined occasionally to see that it is not cutting or wearing. 47. The chariot or carriage upon which the lens revolves must be carefully wiped and the rollers kept properly oiled. If it is necessary to take off the rollers and clean them, this must be done with great care. The rollers must be removed one by one and put back without changing the number of washers previously in use, as the carriage will turn irregularly if all the rollers are not exactly the same distance from the center. When there is any serious trouble with any part of the revolving clockwork or machinery, the inspector and engineer must be at once informed, and a machinist will be sent to remedy the difficulty. 48. When not in use, the weight must always be kept upon its rest, that the strain on the cord may be relieved. 49. Keepers must replace the broken glass of the lantern as quickly as possible. They must learn how to use the cutting diamond, so as to be able to cut the glass when necessary. When glass is cut, its edges should be ground level and smooth by rubbing it upon a cast iron plate covered with sharp wet sand. In placing the glass, about 1/12 of an inch play should be left all around between it and the iron frame. If it touches the iron, great risk of its being broken by the oscillation of the lantern in high wind will be incurred. Thin cleats of lead or soft wood must be used to rest the glass upon when in place. In joining two pieces of glass, which rest one upon the other, the upper edge of the lower piece should be covered with putty, about 2/10 of an inch in thickness. On this, two small strips of lead should be placed, upon which the upper pane should rest. The weight will press out any excess of putty, which excess should immediately be taken off with the glazing knife. The putty on the outside of the frame should be laid evenly and flush with the face of the sash. In replacing the outside slats of the sash, a small quantity of putty should be put over the head of each screw after it has been screwed home, as this will serve to keep the screw in place. 50. The following named returns must be made by keepers of lighthouses. The returns required from keepers of light vessels are given on page 16. Monthly. Report of condition of station, both to inspector and engineer. Fog signal report. Absence report. Quarterly. Expenditures of oil, etc. Vouchers for salary. Abstract of passing vessels. Annually. Property returns. When necessary, receipt for extra supplies, keeper's receipt for property on taking charge, receipt for delivery of supplies, shipwreck report, report of any damage to station or apparatus, this to be made both to the inspector and engineer, any unusual occurrence. The vouchers for salary must be sent so that they will arrive at the inspector's office at least a week before the end of the quarter. 51. The following books must be kept at all stations: daily expenditure book, general account book, journal. A watch book must be kept also at all stations where there is more than one keeper, and a fog signal record where there is a fog signal. In keeping the journal, 2 pages, the right and the left, are to be used for 1 month. The events of the day must be written on one line across both pages. As a general rule, if carefully written, one line will be found sufficient. The visits of the inspector or engineer, or of the lampist or machinist, and an account of any work going on or delivery of stores must be noted, as also any item of interest occurring in the vicinity, such as the state of the weather and other similar matter. The books must be kept in ink with neatness and must always be kept up to date. Footnote: the following addendum was placed to face page 7 of Instructions to Lightkeepers. End footnote. Salutes. Keepers of light stations and light vessels provided with bells will salute with 3 strokes of the bell lighthouse tenders upon their approach to and departure from such stations and vessels. The salute will be returned by the tender with 3 blasts of the whistle or by 3 strokes of the bell. In case of a passing tender, 1 salute as above prescribed will be given and returned. The salute will also be given to all vessels of the United States government, and to any vessel which is known by the keeper to have on board any person entitled to the courtesy of a salute. In case the bell has no inside clapper which can be rung by hand, the connecting rod to the machine should be detached before using the striker for salutes. Instructions for use of 8-day lanterns. Take off reservoir, turn it upside down, and fill it completely with oil. Put reservoir back, light the lamp, let it burn for half an hour, and see that it does not smoke. Once a week, put in a new wick, throw out oil in body of lamp, and rinse with a little fresh oil. Put in a clean wire gauze strainer. To clean strainers, boil in concentrated lye. These lanterns will not go out in the wind, but are liable to be extinguished by a shock. So when the lantern is hung up, care should be taken that it cannot strike the support. When convenient, it is better to place the lantern on a shelf on top of a post. End of section 2.
Section 3 of Instructions to Lighthouse Keepers by the United States Lighthouse Board. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Instructions to keepers using the Funk Lard Oil Float Lamp. 52. Fill the upper reservoir, first closing the stopcock in the supply tube. Then open the stopcock and allow the oil to completely saturate and overflow the wicks, after which close the stopcock until ready to light. 53. Before lighting, and after all connections are made, see that the burner is perfectly level and in the focus. This must be done carefully, as the screwing on of the supply tube is apt to throw the burner out of adjustment. Failure to level the burner is apt to cause breakage of chimneys, and the light will not burn so well when the oil is higher on one side of the burner than on the other. It is also absolutely necessary that the light should be in the focus, as if it is not so, it cannot show well outside. Great care and attention must be given by keepers to these 2 essentials of a good light. 54. Keepers are forbidden to use anything but the lucernes or the small hand lamps in lighting the lamps, as if paper or matches are used, parts are liable to fall into the burner and retard the flow of oil. 55. When lighting up, light the inner wick of the burner first. Having the wick turned up about 1/3 of an inch, hold the lucernes at 2 opposite points, lighting the wick in 2 places at once. When the wick is burning all around, turn it down low and proceed to light the second wick, and so on until all the wicks are lighted. 56. After first lighting, the flame must be kept low, and the chimney above its proper position, so that it will be slowly heated. Turn the wicks up slowly, and gradually lower the chimney until the full height of the flame is reached. This ought to be at the end of half an hour, at which time the flame should show a height for a first-order lamp
of from 3.5 to 3 3/4 inches, for a second order of from 3 to 3 1/4, for a third order of from 2.5 to 2 3/4. See Plate 6. A gauge is furnished, showing about what this height should be. The wicks, when the light is at its full intensity, should be turned up until the flame can be raised no higher without smoking. 57. The flame must be throughout as white as possible. If it is of a reddish tint, it shows that the chimney is too high, or that the damper does not allow sufficient draft, or that the ventilation is not sufficient. If the chimney is too low, a white flame will be obtained, but the flame will not be high enough. When the wind is light, a portion of all the ventilators may be opened. If strong, only those to the leeward. They must be managed so that the light will burn clearly and steadily. 58. If a chimney breaks, turn down the light immediately and put on a spare one, 4 of which must always be on hand. 59. If the wicks need trimming, turn the light as low as possible and trim them without removing the burner. In removing the chimney to do this, wrap it in the flannel cloth provided for the purpose so that it will not cool too suddenly. 60. A spare burner must always be at hand, ready for use, in case one of the wicks gives out, or in case the service burner is in any way out of order. When it becomes necessary to replace the service burner, dip the spare burner in oil before putting it in place, so as to saturate the wicks, after which it may be adjusted. 61. If the oil does not flow freely, or if the supply is entirely cut off, it must in nearly all cases be from a stoppage in the float chamber. When this occurs, remove and clear the float chamber. An accident such as this, however, can scarcely happen with a careful keeper, as it can only occur when the apparatus is clogged with dirt. 62. In putting out the light at sunrise, care must be taken to prevent a sudden cooling of the lamp. Care must also be taken not to heat it too quickly on lighting. To put out the light, the wicks must be slowly turned down, beginning with the outer one. When the light is finally extinguished and the chimney after a time taken off, the chimney must be wrapped in the flannel cloth that it may cool slowly. 63. Once in 6 months, dismount the lamp and thoroughly overhaul it, putting the spare one in its place. Boil the burner and strainer in strong soap suds, then thoroughly wash all parts of the lamp. Rinse them in clean hot water to remove the soap, putting the tubes and burner near a hot stove to dry out the moisture. Wipe out the reservoir with a clean towel. Examine the washers of the pump carefully. 64. Examine the float and float chamber once a week at least. Lint or woolen fiber is frequently found in the oil, which collects around the pin and clogs the passage of the oil. Nothing sharp or hard must be used to clean the valve seat. A piece of soft wood should be used for this purpose. 65. In placing the lamp, the cross threads provided for the purpose must be used to center the burner and to get it into focus. There is a small wooden gauge furnished, which fits in the center of the burner. The lower reservoir, the burner being in place, must be moved until the center of the gauge is just under the intersection of the cross threads and touching them. The spirit level must then be used to show that the burner is level, and the burner or reservoir must be moved or changed until the burner is exactly level, and the center of the wooden plug or gauge is at the proper point. The light will never show well unless it is properly leveled and focused. 66. Lard oil butts must be kept lightly covered, their gutters filled with oil, and their air cocks closed, or the oil will become rancid. A drip can must always be hung on the draw-off cock to catch all drippings. In drawing off the oil,
first turn the air cock to admit air, otherwise the oil will not flow. But the air cock must be closed again as soon as the drawing of the oil is finished. When a butt has been emptied, it must be thoroughly cleaned and washed out and wiped quite dry. The gutters must then be filled with oil and the cocks all closed. 67. The oil found in the lower reservoir after the light has been put out in the morning is to be drawn off as low as it will run through the cock, and any remaining oil must be taken up with a clean sponge or towel and squeezed into the oil carrier. To this oil, add a sufficient quantity from the butt to refill the lamp. When ready to refill, the oil must be drawn into a clean carrier and from thence poured into the reservoir. The actual quantities consumed must constitute the daily expenditures. No guessing or averaging will be permitted. 68. In cold weather, heat the oil before putting it in the reservoir. Its temperature should be raised to about 90 degrees or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or until it is a shade too hot to bear to hold the hand in it. If too hot, it will injure the pump leathers. If it is unusually cold, the precaution may be taken of wrapping flannel about the float chamber, as it is there the oil is most likely to chill. 69. Oil which has any sediment in it must be put in a separate butt used to hold impure oil. From this butt must be taken all the oil used for house lamps. After the oil in this butt has well settled, the clear oil may be drawn off again and used in the lighthouse lamp. Instructions to keepers using the Funk mineral oil float lamp. 70. Fill the reservoir until the oil is visible in the strainer through which it must be poured. When it is full, close the faucet and wind the plunger up to its full height. 71. Open the faucet about 10 minutes before it is time to light the lamp. 72. To light the lamp, raise the damper tube, D, see plate 2, into the connecting tube, K, and let it rest on the locks, 19. Then raise the chimney holder close up to the surface of the burner. Immediately after lighting, adjust the chimney and the damper tube so as to prevent any smoke. The flame should be kept low at first, and the chimney high, so that the chimney may be slowly heated. Raise the wicks gradually and lower the chimney until the flame is at its best, which should be at the end of about half an hour. 72. The damper must be so managed that the flame will burn clear and at its full height and with no smoky points. This must have much and careful attention. 74. About 10 minutes before sunrise, close the faucet, open the damper, and let the flame burn itself out. Then remove and wrap the chimney in flannel until it is entirely cooled. Then simply wipe the ash from the wick. No other trimming is required. With a goose feather or any feather sufficiently long, clean the whole length of the air spaces in the burner. 75. If it is necessary to remove and replace the burner during the night, remove the chimney, close the faucet, 10, see plate 2, unscrew nut 9 and screws 15, then slide the burner forward to detach it from the float chamber connection. 76. To remove and replace the float, unscrew the cap, 14, of the float chamber F, take out the float support, 13, with the float, hold the latter with one hand and with the other unscrew steel pin 12, which will release the float. Before replacing the float, blow through the supply tube, G, and if it is not free from obstruction, it must be made so by washing in hot soap suds. The strainers must be cleaned with hot soap suds. In cleaning the valve seat, use a clean piece of soft wood. No wire or hard substance must be used. 77. In fitting the wicks, be careful to prevent them from extending below the rings.
7